Hello, everybody. So, I had this question from a student a couple of days ago in relation to spline modeling in Blender. Well, it's already resolved, so I might as well share the solution in case anyone is encountering the exact same problem. So, I'm just going to open up my reference here. So, based on what we have here, the goal was to make the heart shape a bit sharper. Now, if you look at it as a spline, they're definitely on the right track right here. If you look at it as just like a curve without the fill, they're definitely on the right track. They made the exact same heart shape. It just needs a little bit of a follow-up. Now, the problem that we currently have here as to why it's not looking sharp is because the 2 points or the vertices that connects these two curves together, well, they're not merged. So the solution here is that we need to merge these vertices right here to basically make one singular spline, because currently, since I don't have this file, it's gonna look it's probably on the outline, it's probably just gonna be like two curves right here. It's gonna have two curves objects here, and that's that. So we're basically just going to combine these two curves together and then merge the two vertices. Now, another question we have here as well is how to make like this pointed curves or like horn structures here using spline modeling as well. Now, this is actually pretty easy as well. We're basically just going to use splines to create the base object for this structure here, and then go from there by simply following up with a few basic modeling techniques with basic scaling and then moving, of course, rotating said vertices. So, knowing all of that, I'm going to demonstrate how to make these two things, starting off with, of course, fixing the actual part right here. So, you can see here, we just need to merge these two together. So, let's move on to Blender, and I already have the reference set up here, and then I'm just going to delete this cube by pressing X to delete, and then I'm going to work on my top view by pressing 7 on the numpad, and then I'm going to start from here. Now I'm just going to probably move this one up a tad bit up, and then start from there. Now to make a spline, so based on the PowerPoints that I've already given in the Facebook group, I'm just going to simply quickly demonstrate it. So I'm first going to make a simple plane by pressing Shift A and then add a plane here. And then selecting the plane, I'm going to press Tab to go to edit mode. And then by default, it's already in vertex select. So I'm just simply just going to select everything, or just going to press A. It doesn't really matter. Even if you select it right here, like for example, I just selected my plane and just go to edit mode. You just press A or just simply highlight it. It doesn't really matter. So you'll know when you selected everything. So once you've selected everything, every vertex right here, I'm just going to press M to merge, and I'm just going to select at center. So that's why it's the vertex created is going to be at the center. If you see it right here, but does it look weird? Okay, so it's basically there. All right. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to go back to object mode, and then I'm going to start making my spline. I'm just going to move this one a tad bit up here to try to line up with the heart here. I'm just going to make the other half, and then I'm just going to flip it once I'm done with this half right here. So after moving that up, I'm going to go back to edit mode by pressing tab again, and then I'm going to press E to extrude, since the currently selected part of this spline is just a vertex. So I'm just going to press E to extrude, and then repeat, rinse and repeat by simply making this curve. Doesn't really matter if it looks a bit jagged for me. You can probably use a Bezier curve as well. It doesn't really matter. But I'm just using a basic straight edge splines here. So from there I can easily just I can easily just edit this out, and I'm definitely more used to this by now. So once I'm done, I want this last vertex here to be perfectly aligned with my starting vertex somewhere over here. So I'm just gonna click anywhere for now, maybe just adjust it to the height I want it to be. I'm just gonna left click on that, and then what I'm gonna do to align this one, I'm going to be using the snap tool, this magnet icon right here. I'm gonna click on that to enable it, and then I'm going to change the snap to option from increment to vertex. So that means when I'm going to move it, and then I try to move it to somewhere near vertex, so for example right here, it automatically snaps to it. But what I want is I just want it to align. So I'm going to make use of the X, Y, Z constraints by simply pressing X or Y or Z while using a navigation tool. Since I'm currently using the move tool by pressing G, I'm just going to lock it on the X axis because I wanted to retain this specific place in the 3D space. So I'm just going to press X, and then as you can see here, it's already locked into the X constraint. So that means I'm going to simply just hover over to the first vertex right here, and then as you can see, it's already perfectly aligned. Maybe I'll just the finishing touches here. Maybe I'll just adjust this one to make it a bit more of a better curve. There we go. So we're basically done. So that is the heart that we are going to be using. Now, what we're going to do next is, currently, since we did start from a plane, it's currently a mesh. It's not exactly a curve yet. So we basically have another option here that we can easily start making it as a curve. But since what we plan on doing here is try to merge these two curves together, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to duplicate this one, and then I'm going to flip it and then merge it and then turn it into a spline to get the fill. So to do that, I'm already back at object mode, so you just press tab, right? What I'm going to do next is I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, and then I'm going to press enter or escape. So basically it just duplicated this curve right here. Let me just rename this one. Let's just rename it to curve, and then this one could be like curve 2. It doesn't really matter. So there we go. We have curve 1 and then we have curve 2. All right. So what we're going to do next, using curve 2, we're basically going to alter the scale. Now, since it's along the x-axis, I could easily just put a negative on the scale x to basically flip it. So there we go. We have curve 2 and then we have curve 1. There we go. So the only thing left to do is combine them. Now to combine them, it's actually pretty easy. So you're just going to select both of them by simply clicking on the outliner and then press and hold Control, and then left click on the other object that you want to merge, or using in the viewport, you can select the objects, and by press and hold Shift, you can select the other curve, and then the shortcut to merge these two together while in object mode is Control J. There we go. And as you can see in the outliner right here, when I press Control J, it turned into one object right here. So it's now just one singular object. But the problem here is still, well, it's still a mesh. So we're going to have to convert it into a curve so we can add our fill to it. Now to do that, it's actually pretty easy. So what we're going to do is, while in object mode, we're just simply going to right click on the object, and then we're going to convert it to a curve. There we go. So curve. And then you can see here in the outliner, it turned this icon right here, turned from a reverse triangle into this sort of curve. And that means it's now a curve. Now the only way to add fill to it now is by using the curve data properties right here. This one right here, this green curve right here. We're just going to select on that, and then we're going to go down here to geometry, and then under here on bevel, we're going to add some depth to it, and then there we go. But wait, there's more. Remember, what we have here is what we currently have. So we just basically replicated what the reference had, what we have on the reference right here. So we forgot to merge these two together. So we're going to merge those two now. So I'm just going to remove the depth going to move it, set it back to 0. And then while in object mode still, we're going to revert it back to a mesh. So I'm going to right click on it and then convert it to a mesh. So this is where the solution comes into play. So while this object is a mesh, we can actually merge the two vertices together, because if we go to edit mode right here, let me turn off my reference so you can see. There we go. If you select one of these vertices together and I try to move it, as you can see, there are two. It's just they're just overlapping each other. So what we want is to basically merge these two vertices together. Now, how do we do that? Well, the easiest way to do this is by using the Auto Merge Vertices tool by Blender. So in edit mode, you have here on the top right corner, you have this little icon right here. On hover, it says Auto Merge Vertices. Now remember that this will only pop up for meshes. So that's why we have to convert it back to a mesh. All right. So we're just going to click on this one to enable it. And then I'm just going to select one of the vertices right here. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to move it. So after moving it, well, let's not forget that we also need our snap tool here. So we're going to enable our snap tool. And then, of course, set it to a vertex so it can automatically snap to the nearest vertex it's closest to. So once again, I'm going to select this vertex, and then I'm going to snap it to here. And then I'm just going to left click to confirm, and then there we go. So every time that I select this vertex now, it's now just one singular vertex. That's how easy it is. All right, there we go. So when we convert this back to a spline now, or to a curve, this will be fixed. Now, the other method on merging vertices is making use of the merge command. So let me disable this one right here. And then back to here, I'm going to make use of the merge command. Now, the merge command is, we've already did this before earlier when we turned a plane into a singular vertex. So what we want to do here is we gotta enable X-ray mode here by toggling this icon right here while still in edit mode, or you can use the shortcut for Alt-Z. So I'm just gonna click on this one for toggle X-ray, and then I'm just going to highlight these two vertices together. So that way, as you can see, if this parts right here turn into orange, that means the two vertices are affected. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to highlight that and select it, and then I'm going to press M for merge, and then I'm just going to select add center. So basically, it just did the exact same thing. Personally, the Auto Merge Vertices tool is way better. You have way more control over on how you snap your vertices, and it's definitely going to be a bit more of a useful tool than the merge command when it comes to poly modeling in the future. So we're basically done with the heart. So we're just going to go back to object mode and then convert it back to a mesh, to a curve. Convert to curve. There we go. And then back to here to the object data properties of the curve. We're going to add more depth to it. And then there we go. So there we go. We have the heart, a very low poly heart, You can easily just add a subdivision surface here by simply reverting. After adding depth to it, we're going to simply revert it back to a mesh so we can keep this geometry here. So we can add this geometry right here. So I'm going to convert it back to a mesh, and then there we go. And then add modifier, and then add my subdivision surface. Now, if you were doing what I'm doing right now, you're simply following along on how I make this heart. This is a little bit of a tease of poly modeling 1 and 2 when it comes to adding edge loops and, of course, subdivision. So this one, I'm just going to simply do a quick demo. So to have this sort of curved look by increasing the levels of the subdivision, I still want to retain this sort of sharp point here and over here as well. So what I'm going to do is simply add some edge loops by pressing Control R while in edit mode. So Control R, and then I'm just going to add an edge loop right here. And see, as I'm nearing the middle part of this object, it's getting sharper. The curve is getting slightly sharper. So there we go. I'm just gonna add another one right here. There we go. So if I go back to object mode, there we go. It has that sharp look to it now. So I'm just gonna go back to here again, and this time on the lower part. Again, Control R to add an edge loop. There we go. Control R, add an edge loop, and then get it near to this median point right here. And then there we go. So we have our heart. Well, it's an excuse of a heart, but it's a heart nonetheless. So the next thing that we are going to do is this one right here, this horn structure here. Now this is actually pretty easy as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a curve once again. So I'm going to add a plane once more, and then we're going to do the exact same thing again when we're going to start making a spline. So press M, add center. I'm going to go back to object mode, and then actually I can start from here. I'm just going to go to edit mode, so that way when I try to duplicate this curve right here, it's going to be perfectly in the middle. So I'm just going to move this vertex alone, maybe place it around here. There we go. And then I'm going to go back to object mode just to make sure that it's there. Okay, it's good. The origin is right there. So we can go back to edit mode, and then we can start making the curve of this sort of horn. Now the curve of this horn, take note on where I'm placing my points, because personally when I'm going to be making curves like this one and using splines as like the base object or the base structure for it, I'm just going to place my points to where like curves, where the median point of a curve is. So maybe I'm gonna place it right here, and then press E to extrude again. Maybe place it right here, and then here, and then this one. I'm going to place it, basically aligning it to this part right here, because I plan on extruding a face right here to make this sort of look to it later on. So I'm gonna add it here, and then I'm gonna add it here, and then lastly will be here. There we go. So what I'm going to do next, I press on tab to go back to object mode, because I'm going to convert this one to a curve so I can add my fill to it. So I'm going to right click on it, convert to, and then convert to curve. And then I'm going to go back here on the geometry and add my depth to it to add my fill. Now it doesn't really matter how much depth you add, because we're just simply going to alter it later on. So 0.04 should be fine for this one. I'm just simply trying to match the reference here. So after I'm done with that, I'm going to right click on it again, convert it back to a mesh so we can have this geometry to work with. Now I'm going to hide this one first so we can focus on this one right here. And then I'm going to turn on X-ray mode. Now this is going to be using basic poly modeling techniques. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to select multiple vertices at once, and then I'm going to try to move it into position to try and match my reference. So I'm just pressing R to rotate, and then I'm just going to press S to scale to basically alter the base width of this sort of horn. And then I'm going to basically rinse and repeat all throughout this curve, trying to match my reference. This one, I'm probably just going to scale it and then try to move it up a bit. To try, again, like I said, match it with my reference. There we go. This one, scale, maybe move it up a bit. This one as well, scale. And as you can see here, if I look back on my perspective, it's having that sort of horn form to it. So I'm just gonna repeat what I've been doing. There we go. This one could use a little bit of a thinner scale. This one as well, since this one right here, it's already getting slender. So I'm gonna try to slim it down a bit as well. There we go. This one. right? And then lastly is this one, which should be the pointed tip. So I'm just gonna, there we go. As you can see here, fully I didn't fully overlap these vertices together because you don't really want that. It's all right if it's not fully overlap as well. So just basically going to try and mimic like that look to it. And then lastly, I'm going to add a fill to this set of vertices right here. Since it's currently selected, well, you can simply just redo that again. You can just press F to fill, and then it will add a cap to it. So there we go. So we're just going to go back to object mode and see how it looks right now. So there we go. We have our horn, a very low poly horn actually. So we're actually on a right track to making this one a really clean output. So what we're going to do next is we're going to try to make this sort of blade thing, I guess. Now, since we don't really have a three-dimensional reference for this, I'm just going to do some guesswork right here. So this is actually going to work well for me. So what I'm going to do is select again this horn right here, and then I'm going to go to edit mode, and then I'm going to press 3 for face select, or you can just select this one. And then I'm going to be selecting these two vertices, these four faces together. Remember when I added my vertices right here when I was making the curve, this was already marking where I want to extrude it. So there we go. So select this one and then hold shift and then left click and then hold shift, left click, hold shift, left click. Okay. So that should be good enough. I'm going to go back to my top view by pressing 7 on the numpad, and then I'm going to extrude it. Now again, it doesn't really matter how much you extrude it. Maybe just give it enough space from the main structure so we can have room to work with. So I'm going to go back to vertices by pressing 1 again, and then I'm going to be doing the exact same thing as I've been doing for the rest of the horn by simply aligning the vertices to the reference. And then I'm going to be adding vertices as I go on if I need to. So again, make sure also to toggle X-ray, because as you can see here, when I highlighted this one and then tried to move it, it didn't grab the ones from behind. So make sure that we have X-ray on, and then I'm basically going to be repeating the exact same thing again, and then I'm going to move it. There we go. The ones from the back are now following as well. Now I'm just going to match this one to the reference once again. Then there we go. This one can be right here because it's like a median point for this sort of curve right here. So I think that should be good. Now for this one, there are two ways that I could probably do this. Maybe I can just use this one to maximize what I currently have, or maybe add an edge loop right here and then extrude this part right here. It doesn't really matter, I think. So I'm probably going to use the latter one. I'm just going to add an edge loop right here, and then I can extrude it from there. So knowing that, I'm going to be adding an edge loop over here by pressing Control R again, and then hovering over this line right here to have this sort of angle for my edge loop. And there we go. So for this one, I'm going to be selecting these two parts together, these two faces here, and then I'm going to be extruding them. So repeat the exact same thing. It doesn't really matter again on how much you extrude because I'll be altering it once again. So this one can be like the pointed edge here, the pointed tip. And then this one could be like one of the curves here. So maybe this one. And then for this one, I could be using this exact same vertex set of vertices again to basically make this curve here. All right, so I think that should be good enough. Now for this one, maybe I want to alter this one as well. Maybe add a bit of a curve to it. All right, now we're basically done with this one, but what we can do is add a bit more detail to it by adding more edge loops. Maybe 2 more edge loops, one for here and then one for here, just to make this curve have a more refined and curved look to it. So that's what I'm probably going to do. So I'm going to add an edge loop once again by pressing Control R. There we go. Maybe just right down here in the middle. And then I'm going to be selecting this part right here, these sets of vertices right here, and then I'm just simply going to move it. Careful to not select not to select one of the parts right here because it's gonna look weird. So when you look at it in a different perspective, this is actually composed of two structures already: the bladed structure right here, and then of course the horn. So what we want to do is try to move the vertices per structure. So there we go. Then add an edge loop right here once again. Then repeat the exact same thing. Try to make the curve have a more fun look to it. And then over here, there we go. So now we're basically done. We're basically done with the horn. Now all that's left is to add a bit more refinement to it by simply adding a subdivision modifier once again. There we go. Then maybe increase the levels to 3 as well. There we go. We basically have the horn structure right there. And now what's left is maybe I'm going to try to duplicate this one. So since the origin is already right down in the middle, I can just simply press Shift D and then press Enter again. And then as you can see here, what's going to happen is we're going to repeat the exact same thing that we did here on the other half. So I'm going to go to Object Data Properties and just going to reverse my X to negative. And there we go. So we have a copy right there. So there we go. We have our finished product. So I hope this helps, and good luck on your spline modeling.